We have Senate Bill 1029 properly before the committee. Representative Scott and Senator Lenney, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Heather Scott from District 1, and today before you, I have Senate Bill 1029. This is a wonderful bill that prohibits an investigation in a child protective case based upon the child's immunization status. If you look at the bill and turn to page 1, what we're doing is we are adding a new section. It's under Title 16, Chapter 16, which is Juvenile Proceedings and the Child Protection Act. It's very short. I'll read you what we're adding. It says no investigation, well, it's investigations based on immunization status prohibited. No investigation may be conducted pursuant to this chapter if it is based upon the child's immunization status. It's pretty self-explanatory. We also add another section, the second part of this bill, and it's under 16-2005. And what we're dealing with here is termination of parent and child relationship, and we're talking about the conditions in which termination may be granted. And so the change, well, the addition is on line 22, and this is just a reminder for the other language. I mean, the other language is really what we're saying, but this is a reminder that the court shall not grant an order terminating the relationship based upon the child's immunization status. I think it's pretty clear, and I'm going to just turn this over to the other sponsor and let him introduce himself to you.
Senator, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm Brian Lenney from District 13, the great city of Nampa, Idaho. Yeah, we're going to talk about this bill really quick. Representative Scott's name should have been on the fiscal notes, so I'm going to get that fixed on my side of the building over there. So the idea for this bill was inspired by the growing hostility around the whole vaccine issue, especially in the last 3 years. I don't think I have to belabor that point, no matter what side you're on, or if you're in the middle, or wherever you stand on that issue. That's where I got the idea for this bill. And this was also after hearing from hundreds of people specifically in Nampa around medical freedom and health freedom. And I know different people mean different things by those terms. But with regard to how things were handled during 2020, 2021 mostly, that's where the idea for this came, because we saw the calls for parents to be shamed, shunned, to have their children taken away, to have even be put in jail due to the medical decisions they made for their child. So I would submit to you also that the issue here is not so much specifically vaccines per se, but it's about clarifying in Idaho Code what constitutes neglect. Right now, I would say Idaho has some great protections in place, and that's largely due to people even sitting in this room when it comes to parental rights and medical freedom and those types of things. We have a really good highway. We have some pretty good guardrails up, but there's a few spots where there are no guardrails and there's a cliff on the other side. So this bill seeks to remedy that problem. Because without clear established measures in place, there's no guarantee that anyone in Idaho can avoid the consequences of medical neglect turned into a weapon. Now, I've got calls on this exact issue from people in Nampa who most, with this type of thing, a lot of people don't want to put their name out there because they're afraid that of retaliation, that type of thing, or Representative Scott just shared with me yesterday, actually, coincidentally, and she can speak to that later if someone wants to ask her, but she received a few calls from people in Canyon County, I think last week or something like that on this specific issue. You know, I know people in Idaho and in other states where I've resided, which are none are as great as Idaho, of course, but who have been threatened on this issue in doctors' offices, things like that, by social workers. So what I'm trying to do here again is just shore this up. And these things, you know, doing the research for this and really digging in and asking the questions, I found pages and pages and pages of this type of thing happening all over the United States. You know, there was really quickly a few examples. I read about a case in New Jersey from August of 2020 where two parents were separated. They had to go to court, custody hearing. One parent wanted to vaccinate the child, one did not. And because in that case there was no law in place, the judge, we just had judges, the judge had to decide what to do with that child. October 2021, there was another case in New York City where a judge suspended a father's visitation rights, custody rights with his kids over this. There was a mom in Michigan who was recently jailed for refusing to vaccinate her son. And there's stories that go on and on and on. But what was really troubling to me, again, making sure there was a valid reason for this, was in 2019, and when I presented this on the other side, we actually had we had someone testify on this from the state of Maine. So in 2019, which was obviously before the pandemic, the state of Maine yanked all of their non-medical exemptions for vaccinations. So religious, moral, philosophical exemptions for a parent to vaccinate their child, Maine took those away. And since then, Maine, I wish she was testifying in this committee as well, but Maine has seen a big uptick in this because it's kind of open season on that. And there's a lot of stories like that. And here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that this is currently a big problem in Idaho. This is not a major problem, I think, but if we don't, like I said, put the guardrails in place, it could very easily become one. And Mr. Chair, can I read just one sentence from the Idaho Capital Sun from an article 2 weeks ago?
You can, then we need to wrap up.
Okay, then we'll wrap it up. So this is from the Idaho Statesman, or I'm sorry, Idaho Statesman. Idaho Capital Sun, January 26, 2023, a representative from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare said, quote, "There may be cases where a parent's decision not to immunize has been part of a report, CPS report, but it would never be a reason for a referral to be assigned for safety assessment by the Child Welfare Division of the department." And while that seems assuring, my reply would be just simply, why not? Why not? Because if we don't have specific language in the Idaho Code to address this issue, there's nothing stopping either the initiation of a CPS report or the termination of a parental rights case. So with that, I would ask you to put this simple protection into place and vote yes on Senate Bill 1029, but I'll stand for questions, of course.
Thank you, Senator. Questions?